Welcome to Changing Higher Ed, a podcast dedicated to helping higher education leaders improve their institutions. With your host, Dr. Drumm McNaughton, CEO of The Change Leader, a consultancy that helps higher ed leaders holistically transform their institutions. Learn more at changinghighered.com. And now, here's your host, Drumm McNaughton.
Thank you, David. My guest today, I welcome back Dr. Courtney Brown, Vice President of Impact and Planning for the Lumina Foundation. Lumina is an independent private foundation located in Indianapolis that is committed to making opportunities for learning beyond high school available to all. As Lumina's Chief Data and Research Officer, Courtney oversees the foundation's efforts in the areas of strategic planning, learning, impact, and effectiveness. She also leads Lumina's international engagement. Courtney's an expert in post-secondary strategy, student success, data-driven decision-making, and evidence-based practice. And she joins me today to talk about the reality of higher education's loss of public confidence. Not just what the media is saying and amplifying, but what employers, graduates, and students are saying about higher education. We'll also talk about the Foundation's national goal of 75% college and certificate attainment, something that's critical for the public good of our nation and the world. Courtney, welcome back to the program.
It's great to be here with you.
I'm looking forward to our conversation as always. It's been, about 4 or 5 months since we've chatted? What have you guys been up to?
We've been up to quite a bit. So last year, in the spring of last year, we announced a new goal for the nation. And that goal for the nation is by 2040, 75% of Americans in the labor force will have a degree or other credential that leads to economic prosperity.
Wow, that's big. And where is everybody right now?
So we're at about 43% right now as a nation. We have something called Stronger Nation. Your audience is free to Google it, look up Stronger Nation, the Lumina Foundation, and you can see the data. We're really transparent about it. We hold ourselves accountable to the goal using that tool, Stronger Nation. So in there, you can see the nation's at about 43%, but you can also look at every state, disaggregate it by credential type, and a host of other things. It's really fun, and you can't break it, so go play.
That's neat. We're going to get into that a lot deeper, but before we really get into it, give the listeners just a little bit about your background. I've always find it fascinating to see what the guests have done to get in this position, and your story is equally as fascinating.
Yeah, I don't know about fascinating, maybe scattered is more like it. I have an undergraduate degree actually in Spanish and international affairs. And then I went on to get...
¿Hablas español?
Not so much anymore. It's been quite some time. I got a master's in linguistics. I studied Native American, Indian languages, which was really fascinating. And so it seems odd where I am now. And then I moved in to get a PhD in research and evaluation, kind of pulling all these things together. And what I like to think about is linguistics and other things are really a puzzle, trying to pull things together and make sense of them. And that's where I see my current role at Lumina is really pulling together research and data, learning, and try to decide where we go, what we do, what we don't do, and how we get there.
And it's so critical for what your role is, and frankly, for all of higher education, to better understand what is the truth of the matter instead of just saying public perception of higher education is low. It's like, is that really true? And if so, why?
Yeah, absolutely. Unpack it, keep asking questions. The best answers lead to more questions.
I couldn't have put it better. We were watching an episode of The West Wing, and one of them was lies, damn lies, and statisticians. And of course, with us being in higher ed for as long as we have, we hear that all the time. But there's some truth to it. You can make stats do nearly anything you want it to do if you're looking at the right thing. Your role is to make sure the statistics and the polling is accurate so we can make good data-driven decisions.
Absolutely. And try to break through the noise a little bit and make it applicable to what's going on.
You're saying that there's noise right now in higher ed? Really?
You know what? There's a lot of noise, but there's always the noise. But right now, I would say there's a little bit of noise going on. Yeah.
So that's your background. Tell us about Lumina. You guys do some amazing stuff.
Yeah, so Lumina Foundation, we're an independent foundation, national foundation, and we're focused on expanding opportunities for learning beyond high school. I mentioned the goal that we focus on, but we're really looking for sustainable change to improve Americans' lives, to ensure that they have good jobs and good lives moving forward. So for Lumina, it's not about having more people get a degree for degree's sake. It's about increasing the number of Americans who have high quality credentials. We want that to lead to, economic mobility, civic engagement, and long-term opportunity. And so we focus all of our efforts on that.
And it's very much in line with, rather than the attainment of the degree, is what's the value of that degree in the marketplace and to the individuals.
Absolutely. So for the last 15 years, Lumina has really been focused on increasing attainment, which is still very important. We have to continue to do that. And when we set the goal for the nation in 2009, about 38% of Americans had a degree. Today, about 55% of Americans have a degree or other credentials. So
that's big.
States have made incredible progress. And that's nationally, every state was on board and really worked on this. And so that's important. But it's no longer sufficient just to have that degree. As I said, we want to make sure it's valuable, that it's leading to something for people.
And when leading to something, it's not only for economic attainment or economic benefit for the individuals, but there's also a public good piece of that as well.
Absolutely. It's for the public good. It's for our economy, for our society. Increasing education helps with all of those things.
And that's something that's always fascinating to me, because we have shifted over from a public good, what I call the old Clark Kerr model from California, where education is both for the higher good of the nation and the public, as well as for the individuals. It's become much more focused on the individual and what we call WIFM, what's in it for me.
And I think that's a fair point, because people invest a lot of time and energy. And so they want to make sure they're going to get something out on the other end. And when we think about our goal, the goal that we set for the nation, it is at that individual level. We are looking at economic prosperity for individuals, because the more that individuals are prosperous, then the more likely they will contribute to their communities. They'll vote, they'll participate, they're healthier, all of those things, which lead to stronger communities, stronger states, and a stronger nation.
And with that, it's that old adage, a rising tide floats all boats. If you have a good economy, if you have educated people within that economy, it's going to lift pretty much everybody up, is it not?
It definitely helps. I mean, we need to focus on, a lot of people are not being served or served well. And so we need to make sure we're focusing efforts on all people. But absolutely, we are focused on that 75% of Americans.
So the transition from attainment to value, your old goal, it was about 17% or somewhere in there of people increasing with degrees. Now you've got stronger nation. And how are you measuring that goal?
Right. So our new goal, we're still using Stronger Nation. So we've been reporting transparently all the data in Stronger Nation for the last 15 years. So the measure for the new goal is that it counts as a quality credential if somebody has one of these credentials, a degree, a certificate, workforce certification, but they also have to be making at least 15% over what a high school degree averages alone. And so we are looking for that economic bump, that ROI, if you will, from participating in getting that degree or that credential to the workforce.
How difficult is that to measure?
We are starting with that because we can measure that. We use the American Community Survey. We're able to look at education level and what wages somebody is making. But it's not sufficient. We're starting with that because we can measure that. There are other things that we are really interested in, but we can't measure them yet, like cost. What is the cost of getting a credential or a degree? What is the debt that somebody's taking on, and those sort of things. And we're really working on trying to find better ways to measure that. And as soon as we can, we will incorporate that measure into Stronger Nation, into our measurement also.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because there's not only the upfront cost, but there's the opportunity cost as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so we didn't mention earlier, and that's on me, you have a partnership with Gallup, where they're doing a lot of the research. Tell us about that and how it impacts what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so we've been working with Gallup for a number of years because I noticed that a lot of people in the field try to guess what students are going to do or what students think, and that hasn't worked so well for us. And so instead of just guessing, we actually ask students. We ask current students. We ask people who stopped out, who were a student and stopped out without completing. We ask people who have never touched higher ed. We ask alumni. We ask the general public. So we ask lots of different groups of people what their perceptions are, what their experience is with higher education. And one of the things that I took particular interest in is Gallup for many years has asked how confident the public is in a variety of different types of institutions around the country. That could be small businesses, the police, Congress. You can imagine how well they do. So all these different institutions. But one of the things I noticed a couple of years ago was people's confidence in higher education had taken a sharp nosedive. So about 10 years ago, roughly 60% of Americans had a great deal of confidence in higher ed, just 10 years ago, 60%. And 10 years later, only about a third of people had a great deal of confidence in higher ed. Worse, a third of people had no confidence in higher education. So I thought that's a really interesting data point. And this goes back to what does the data tell you? Ask more questions. So my question was, why? Why are they lacking confidence? And again, I probably could have guessed, you could have guessed all of those things, but we thought, let's ask the public. So we asked them, why do you not have confidence in higher ed, or why do you? Well, what are the different reasons? And some of these we maybe could have guessed, but the number one reason people don't have confidence in higher education was politicization. They felt like it's too political, that students were getting indoctrinated. That was the number one. Yeah. The second reason was they cited lack of job relevant skills. They didn't feel like higher ed was training people for the workplace. And this is really about a 4-year degree is when people were disaggregated the data. The third reason is probably what most people would put as the number one reason, and that's cost. It's just not affordable. People aren't confident that they're going to spend all this money and get something out of it. So that was really interesting to me. And given that we're at this moment that higher ed is being questioned, not just by policymakers, but by families. If you're an organization like Lumina committed to increasing attainment, you got to take that seriously.
Absolutely. And so I'd like to go through each of those a little bit more because politicalization makes perfect sense. If you disaggregate the data, can you see any meaningful results with that?
We disaggregated that data. That was from the general public. And again, we saw that people were really talking more about a 4-year institution than a 2-year institution. They have higher confidence, not a lot of confidence, but still higher confidence in 2-year institutions, community colleges, than they do 4-year. They don't think they're as political. They think they're more connected to the workforce. They're not as costly. But the other thing we did was we looked at what current students are actually saying. So in our annual survey with current students and alumni, we asked them these same questions because the confidence question really was from the general public. And what we saw from students was really a different thing than what we were seeing from the public. We saw that 93% of students are confident that they're learning the skills they need for the jobs they want. The vast majority are confident their degree is going to help them get a job. And 75% of graduates say their degree was critical to getting a job. So when people are questioning that it's not aligned with the workforce, current students and alumni are saying, actually, I got a job. I do believe I'm learning the right things. So that was just something interesting that we saw where there's just a difference between what the public perception is and the experience students and alumni have.
With that, what do the employers say?
So that's really interesting. So we have a new study that's just come out about employers. So we actually asked employers, triangulate your data, ask current students, ask alumni, what are employers? What do they need? And that's where the story becomes even more complex and really interesting. So about half of employers, about 48%, say jobs at their organization require a college degree. And 3/4 of employers say the degree is going to be as important or more important in 5 years.
Wow.
And 3/4 of employers prefer candidates with a degree, that's an associate's or bachelor's, even when it's not required. So we hear a lot in the media about degrees not being required or people are not hiring people with degrees, but that's not what we're seeing from these data from employers. Now, that's in one bucket. But we also hear employers saying that only about a half of colleges are graduating students with skills their organization needs. And most of the recent graduates require some moderate training for the jobs they need. And about half of them are having a lot of difficulty hiring candidates with the right skills.
Interesting.
So employers, we see that they still value degrees and they're signaling that they'll value them in the future, but they're clearly telling us that there's some alignment and readiness problems.
Yeah. Well, it's also too interesting because AAC&U did a similar survey about what employers feel higher ed is doing. And I can't remember if it was 70 or 80% of employers said that higher ed is providing the skills that they need.
Yeah. And one of the things, again, back to my comment that data and results always have you ask more questions, like it makes me curious about what that additional training. We hear that about 70% say that graduates require moderate or significant additional training. But I wonder, for any new job, you need training to understand that location. So is it that they want colleges to teach it all and that somebody would come out and not need any additional training? Or is everybody require some training because you need to learn the ins and outs of that particular organization? I'm not sure. So it's definitely something that I'm interested in exploring further.
And I think you should. I want to revert back just a little bit because the politicalization and the, quote, general public, I am wondering right now, I think when we spoke a couple days ago, you had told me there's 43 million folks out there who have some credits or no credits. They've essentially dropped out. This is one of the big areas that higher ed is trying to recruit back to get them their degree. But how much does this large swath of folks who have dropped out of college, how much is that affecting the public perception?
That's a really interesting point. So, as you said, there are 43 million. 43 million, that's a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
People who started college and for whatever reason had to stop out. So they accumulated some or a lot of credits and have stopped out with nothing to show for it. And so, oftentimes I would say the system failed them. So they probably don't have a great feeling about higher ed because they tried the system. Some people are probably still paying for that. They took on debt and they have nothing to show for it. So I think it's definitely something we need to focus on. And I've been talking about this population for a number of years because they're a population that haunts me, how many people that we have failed. But the number continues to go up year after year. And that's problematic. So while some people are coming back and some states and institutions are figuring out a way to get these students or these individuals to come back and complete something, most of them are not. And more people are stopping out than are actually coming back and completing, which makes this number increase every year.
Yeah. And there's some specific reasons around why they generally drop out, is there not?
Yeah, they're not stopping out because they can't handle it academically. I mean, this isn't a monolith, first of all. There's all kinds of reasons for all of these people. I think oftentimes the general public just assumes, they couldn't cut it. It was too hard. And that's generally not the reason. They stop out because college collides with work, collides with needing to make money, it collides with life. And so when they're forced between school and a paycheck's going to win almost every time, especially when you have children to feed or adults to take care of. So it's really hard to balance the two. And it just feels overwhelming. And we hear in the Gallup survey that the number one reason people consider stopping out is stress.
Mm-hmm.
It's not surprising if you've got, to work, you have children of your own, you have people to take care of. There's just a lot going on.
Sure. And schools nowadays, some of them are changing. I mean, Arizona State's a good example of this. But there's many schools out there who are organized around what people will call trad students, the traditional 18 to 24-year-old where you can stop your life and go to school. We've got far more non-trads right now than we do trads. And the number of trads is dropping because of the demographic cliff.
Yeah, and that's language I don't usually use because they are today's students. These are today's students.
True.
They are over 45 years old. A lot of them have children of their own. They are financially independent. So the picture of the college student leaving high school and going to live in a brick building for 4 years that their parents are paying for doesn't exist for a vast majority of Americans.
Yeah.
They are today's students. And so we really have to design a higher education system to meet those students where they are. And that's where we do a pretty crummy job.
Yeah. I would agree. There needs to be better ways to reach out to these students, different types of support for them. Just going back to those 3 reasons, stress, mental health, childcare, and costs, these older students, well, instead of non-traditional, we'll call them older. That could be kind of pejorative when I think about myself as being old.
Yeah, I mean, they're 22. You can be 22 and have children to take care of and have to have a full-time job.
Yes.
So it's not even an age thing. It's just the reality of today.
Yeah. And so with that, there needs to be different support mechanisms put in place. And many colleges don't even stop and think about those kind of things because it would be cost prohibitive for them, completely out of their business model, et cetera.
Absolutely. Here we think very traditionally that services are available from 9 to 5, and you have to make an appointment, or that assumes that people even know where to find the counseling office, which is often down like a dark hallway somewhere, and it's not that accessible to people, especially if, you have to go to daycare, drop your child off at daycare, go to your work, and then try to find an office and it's, closed.
So Courtney, there are these challenges with these, what I call the non-traditional students, what you call older students, or
I call them today's students.
Today's students, thank you. That CRS gets me all the time. What can I say? So with today's students, what are some of the things that colleges need to do to make these students feel welcome, successful, and get them to complete their degrees?
Yeah, I think that we need to do 2 things. First of all, we need to help the 43 million come back and get a credential of value. Mm-hmm. And I think the mistake we made is many institutions reach out to them and offer them to come back exactly to what they were doing before. Clearly, that didn't work. And the students may still owe money to that institution. They may have unpaid parking debts that don't even allow them to enroll. So the institution needs to think about what's going to make it easier to get students to come back, especially those that are close to finishing. Mm-hmm. Remove some of those administrative barriers, automatically award credentials when, they've met some of these requirements. Some just forgot to apply for graduation. You actually have to apply. Even if you've made all those credits, it'll just sit there if you haven't applied. Offer more flexible scheduling, more, completion grants for some of these students. And at the same time, make sure this doesn't happen, that we continue to increase these numbers. So this should be available to all current students. More advising, connect programs clearly to jobs, treat advising and mental health support as core completion strategies, not these extras that are in dark hallways.
Mm-hmm. And it's also interesting because you talk about scheduling, and faculty have a big say on the scheduling of classes. Also, students want preference. There's a number of institutions out there who I've heard complain, well, the students are doing online courses from their dorm rooms. It's like, why not? Who cares?
Right. I think finding multiple ways, but I also don't want to assume that every student who is working doesn't want to come on campus and take classes in person. I find a mix, what we see in the research, a mix really works well. Make sure that students have the opportunity to have some online classes, and then also that opportunity to be in person if possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've known multiple universities who, if you are a, quote, traditional student, that you're not permitted to take online classes and face-to-face classes at the same time, which to me is crazy.
Yeah, these days. This is why we have to really rethink our higher education system to better serve today's students.
Mm-hmm. So with this busting myths, we've talked about politicalization, we've talked about job-ready skills. And we peripherally talked about cost as part of the reasons why the 43 million have dropped out. But let's focus a little bit more on cost. Obviously, getting a degree is very expensive, but the return on the degree over a lifetime is normally 3 times. I can understand completely if you're looking at, if your parents are making 20, 30,000 a year or even more, and your tuition, room and board, fees, etc., are going to come to 70 or 80,000. I mean, that's twice what your parents make in a year.
Right. And keep in mind, many students are financially independent from their parents, so they're having to foot this bill. And I would say that, $5,000 is a lot of money. So it's not even the $60,000, the $80,000. It's $5,000 when you don't even have that to put food on the table. So I think there's some nuance there. I also think, or know from what we see, that students believe in higher education. They believe in the value. They believe it is going to lead to a good job and a good life. They're less confident in the pricing. They're less confident that it's affordable or that colleges charge fair prices. I mean, you can believe in the value of something and still not have the means to actually get there. And I think that's a tension most students are facing nowadays.
Mm-hmm. How do we get past that?
We've got to take on affordability head on. It is out of reach. College is out of reach for far too many people. And we have to find ways to make it more affordable.
The biggest driver of costs for university is people, salaries. And you've got tenured faculty who, lifetime employment earners, et cetera. How do we cut back on these type of things? How do we reduce the costs?
I think taking a close look at some of the business models is really important. Running a college is not cheap. You don't want to do the cheap version where you don't get some of this knowledge and different support systems like mental health support and these other things we've been talking about. But I also think that colleges, if they focused on what today's students need and and tomorrow's students and the credentials that are going to be needed and who even today's students are, they might think more about their business model and about adults, about returning adults, about adults who've never touched school, about lifelong learning, and begin to open their business model. So not just thinking about the 18 to 21-year-old who's going to live on campus, but how do they think bigger, especially with the demographic cliff. We have fewer and fewer 18-year-olds that are going to walk on campus. So they have to rethink who they're serving and how they're serving them if they're going to survive.
It's very, very true. And for example, if there's someone who's preferring to take online classes, do you need as many dorm rooms? No, you don't. Real estate is a huge cost. You normally get donors to pay for new buildings, et cetera. But there's also the deferred maintenance that goes into the whole picture.
Yeah, I think, each institution needs to really look at who they're serving, who they're not serving, who do they want to serve in the future, and is there sufficient individuals there, and really think about what they do with that and probably redesign some of their systems.
Mm-hmm. I love the model that Paul Quinn College is doing. They've got freshman and sophomore year. Students actually work for the college in jobs, and it helps defer part of their tuition. In junior and senior year, they have externships, internships, where they're actually working for some of the university partners. They're earning a salary, and that helps defer part of the tuition as well. It's a win-win-win for everybody involved. That, to me, that's a very innovative business model.
Yeah, that's an impressive one, and others are really thinking through this. I would say that Higher Ed is trying new models, trying different things, so I applaud their efforts, and that's really important. The other thing is, and to bring it back to the top, when you started talking about the public good, education is a public good. Talent is a public good for our country, and we continue to disinvest in that. And so how do we think about at the state level, at the national level, making more investments in higher ed, more investments in our population so that they can get that talent. So institutions need to make some changes, but so are policies, our state and federal policies, to really think about this being a public good and how do we help more people get there.
The biggest drivers of economic growth and efficiency, productivity are technology and education. Those are your two biggest things. Why are we not thinking of it in those terms instead of having to cut back state, federal budgets that fund higher ed?
Yeah, a lot to think about.
Absolutely. Any further thoughts?
Yeah, I would say the only thing that we didn't really touch on was that first one about politicization, which is a really interesting piece to me, because what I said at the top, where the American public is losing confidence in higher ed because they think it's too political. And an interesting thing, when we asked students about this, they reported experiences much more balanced and actually bipartisan than many assume. And so, when we looked at the data about confidence, more Republicans had lost confidence in higher ed because they say it's too political than the Democrats. Democrats are more focused on the affordability. Republicans were more concerned about that indoctrination piece, that political piece. But when we asked students, current students, regardless of political affiliation, they had more balanced, more positive experiences and felt like they belonged on their campuses more than what the general public is saying. So I think that's a really important thing to pay attention to also.
That's not surprising for me, having been on campuses for a good portion of my working career. But it doesn't surprise me in that we see so many cuts in higher education, and politicians have to have a reason for justifying these cuts. Oh, you're too woke. That's a big one we see out of Florida. And there's a stacking of the boards of right wing. What they're doing is, to me, it's to make a political point instead of trying to provide a great education that really looks at both sides of the coin.
Yeah, I think it's important to look at both sides and talk to students. I also think in all of this, there's a glimmer of truth also. And so, none of this is perfect. And there are definitely students who feel silence. It wasn't 100% said everything is going great here.
Really? People feel, it's not 100%. I'm shocked.
Right. But we think it's a chance to say, okay, what isn't working here? Who did not feel like they belong? And what can we do about that to make sure that when we admit students here and we want to increase access, we want to have more people to have this opportunity, we want to make sure that they can succeed here. That means that they listen to, they can share their opinions, they can hear other opinions, that they feel like they belong. They feel like they are respected by staff, by faculty, by their fellow students. And I think every institution should take a look at what's going on in their schools and think about how they can make it better.
When I look at higher ed, I look at three purposes. There's obviously the individual, the economic, the growth from that perspective, the learning. There's the public good, but there's also a huge transformation piece, especially with younger students. They're going away from home possibly for the first time or commuting. They're making decisions on their own. This is a critical piece in their transformation. This is a critical piece in their growth. And I think people are forgetting that it is economic, it is public good, and it's individual transformation.
Absolutely.
So, as always, Courtney, it's a pleasure to see you and have you back on the show. As we always do, 3 takeaways, university presidents and boards. What do they need to be doing right now?
So I would say stop playing defense. Lead with the evidence. People are questioning whether students are getting value. Just show the data and be transparent about it. And where you're failing, work on it, improve that. So lead with evidence. The second one I would say is you need to close that skills perception gap. So if employers say grads need more training, question that. What other training? Are there other things we can do to make sure that our students are workforce ready, that they can get a good job out of school? And then, it goes back to today's students, to the modern learner. Redesign for the modern learner. Think about flexibility, mental health support, childcare support. Things that are going to help the current students, today's students, really thrive and succeed.
Those are 3 great takeaways, especially for students nowadays. Thank you. What's next for you? What's next for Lumina?
As I mentioned at the top, we announced this new goal earlier in 2025. And so really talking about that new goal, making sure that we have good measures, and we really focus on cutting through the noise and focusing on ensuring that we're building the talent in the U.S. for today and tomorrow.
Please keep doing what you're doing. It's so critical to our whole industry and frankly, our way of life. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Our pleasure. I look forward to the next time. Hopefully it'll be, maybe next week or two. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe just in a few months when you have more research to talk about.
I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening today, and a special thank you to my guest, Courtney Brown. Courtney, it's always a pleasure having you on the show. I look forward to the next time we get a chance to talk about these important issues. To my listeners, thanks again for tuning in. See you next week.
Changing Higher Ed is a production of The Change Leader, a consultancy committed to transforming higher ed institutions. Find more information about this topic, along with show notes on this episode at changinghighered.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to the show, and we would also value your honest rating and review. Email any questions, comments, or recommendations for topics or guests to podcast@changinghighered.com. Changing Higher Ed is produced and hosted by Dr. Drumm McNaughton, post-production by David L. White.